alone. They do not reflect those of this network, his employer, any of the universities he attended, his family and friends, or former roommates, any of the 5 Temptations, the 4 Tops, or any number of the Pips. They may or may not reflect those of the other voices in his head. His dog, however, agrees with him 100%. And now, broadcasting from Venture X Studios in Frisco, Texas, it's the Snarky Parenthetical. Here's your host. He's highly caffeinated and mildly irritated. Here's Lathan Watts.
All right. Welcome back, Snarky Parenthetical. A lot to talk about today, so we're just going to jump right into it. First segment, we always do a little bit of kind of newsworthy stuff. So I want to talk about a little article I found. CNBC recently did a little story about the 10 worst places to live in America. And I found their coverage from notthebee.com, which I would highly recommend to anyone. Formerly, my favorite website on the internet was the Babylon Bee until they launched Not the Bee. And Not the Bee has now taken the #1 spot as basically the reason to keep the internet. And to me, even the fact that they had to do a separate site called Not the Bee is probably the best social commentary that anybody could provide. Like they had so many stories that were so ridiculous that if they posted them, people would think it was satire. If they posted them on the regular Babylon Bee site, which is satire, that they had to launch an entire new website.
Right.
Like, this is where we're going to put all of these absurd actual stories, and we're just going to call it Not the Bee. Yeah.
You can imagine the moment the light bulb went off.
Right.
In someone's head over there when they realized, oh, yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
We're missing out on a gold mine.
Right. There's a whole other universe of ridiculous, stupid things that people put in media that nobody's going to believe is a real story. So if we put it on the satire side, people are going to assume it's satire, and we'll constantly be having to put the disclaimer, no, this is real. Okay, well, let's just launch this new site. So congrats to you. Notthebee.com covered this. CNBC finds the worst states to live in are the ones everyone's moving to. Now, the greater sort of societal principle that I think this demonstrates is like if you want to talk about a divide in this country, it's really no longer about left versus right, one race versus another, R versus D, even governing versus governed, which I think is a true divide. But really, we're now down to like people who live in the real world and people who don't. It is the sane versus the insane. So CNBC is trying to tell you that these are the worst places to live.
Right.
However, people who live in the real world have decided to move to these places, despite CNBC's best efforts of telling you all the reasons why these are the worst places to live. So, you kind of scroll through the article there. It says half the states on CNBC's worst list made the top 10 in population growth during the COVID pandemic. Georgia, Texas, Arizona, Tennessee, Nevada, with Texas, Arizona, and Georgia ranking 1, 3, and 5, respectively. The rest are all above average in population growth, with the lone exception of Louisiana, which I love, because I can guarantee you that's because Louisiana stinks.
Oh, absolutely.
It just does. If you listen to the last episode, say no more.
You know.
They also released their list of the 10 best places to live using the same criteria, and only one state of their top 10 managed to rank above 26th in population growth. So
wow.
Their criteria for 10 best places to live, only one of them ranked in the top half of states where people are actually moving to. The rest were in the 30s and 40s. And if you want, just for example of this, just crackerjack analysis that they did, take Indiana, for example.
Right.
One of the reasons why they say Indiana is one of the worst places to live is, according to them, the Hoosier State ranks 48th in public health funding per capita, spending a paltry $55 per person in 2020. So it's terrible to live in Indiana because they don't have enough socialized medicine, basically, is what this article points out. And then it goes on to say, however, the same survey and the same criteria listed as one of Indiana's strengths
Right.
They're hospital resources. So that's one of the, on the plus side, they have really great hospitals there, but you have to pay your own way. It's not socialized medicine, so that therefore it's a terrible place to live.
And they really didn't see the irony there.
No, they completely missed it. It's just too good to be
Talk
true.
About being detached from reality.
Yeah. They talk about some of their criteria, by the way, is life, health, and inclusion, and they pay greater attention than ever to equity and inclusion. Keep in mind, equity and inclusion have to be, if not totally, then totally subjective. Okay?
Right.
There's no objective way to measure this.
Yep.
But that's the big thing for CNBC on why you should not live there.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as Not to Be points out, to sort of back up why they did this, they cite to a New York Times reporter who said that objectivity is a myth built to maintain white supremacy. So,
what?
So that's why we can't be objective.
Because it's a vestige of the white supremacist patriarchal.
Right.
Of course.
That truth is objective. It is not subjective. And therefore it's somehow racist.
Truth is racist.
Yeah. Objectivity is racist.
Mm-hmm.
So CNBC trying to tell you these are all the worst places to live, and the people who live in the real world can't wait to live there. That's exactly. Our America these days. It's the real divide is between those of us who live in the real world and those who don't.
Mm-hmm.
The 100%. The other sort of big news story, I guess, this week. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because it seems like everybody and their dog is talking about it. But Simone Biles, and her withdrawing from competition for her mental health, according to her, so that she could focus on herself. And how everybody in pretty much everybody, with maybe the exception of like Matt Walsh and a couple of guys at Daily Wire, are trying to browbeat you into celebrating this.
Right.
And again, this is the difference between people who live in the real world and people who don't.
Right.
Okay, because I took one look at what was going on, and what she said was the reason why she did it. And I'm like, so you choked, and then you quit.
Right.
If this was any other athlete in any other sport, that would be the story.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Did not perform up to what everybody expected. Choked.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't deal with it, so she quit. But in the unrealistic world that some people choose to live in, quitting is now somehow winning. Abandoning your team is somehow supporting your team. Focusing on yourself is not selfish.
Right.
I mean, I heard the people on TV that, there she is, she's got her warm-ups on. There she is out there supporting her team. She's not supporting her team. She's watching her team.
Exactly.
She's watching her team compete without her after she abandoned them. Right? Yep. That's in no way supportive. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I'm not saying, I'm not trying to really just come down on her the way some people have. She talked about all the pressure, of feeling like the weight of the whole country's on her shoulders.
Sure.
Every athlete at the Olympics has the pressure of their entire country on their shoulders. That's the point of representing your country. The whole country is rooting for you. The whole country wants to see you do well.
That's the point of being at that level.
Welcome to competition, right? There's pressure that comes along with it.
Right.
And you've managed it in the past. You won the Olympic all-around, 3 times? That's how you lay claim to being like the greatest of all time.
She I believe she won gold in 2016 and then several world championships since. Yeah.
And I'm not saying she's not the greatest of all time. I think she probably is.
Right.
But there's added pressure that comes with that, and she embraced that label.
Right.
Okay? That little sequin goat on the back of her leotard didn't show up by accident without her knowing it. Mm-hmm. Okay. And every commercial that she's in.
Oh yeah.
And the money she's paid for that. she embraced it. She could have taken a completely different route. She could have gone like the humility route and said, you know what, that's not for me. You know, that's a conversation that sports writers and sports commentators have. I do my absolute best. When I'm at my absolute best, I feel like I am the best, and I will win. Mm-hmm. But greatest of all time, that's a coffee house conversation for sports writers. That's not for me. Like,
Exactly.
she could have gone that route, but she didn't. Okay,
she
so
fully
you want to talk about the pressure? You brought it on yourself too. And then when it didn't go well, the first couple of events, all of a sudden you're not having fun anymore, and I need to really just focus on myself. Any other athlete, any other sport, we'd be talking about how they choked and quit.
Yep, especially when you're at that. I mean, I was talking to someone today. I was like, think about if someone seen as on her level in another sport, take like a LeBron James, Tom Brady.
You don't even have to do a hypothetical.
Right?
Do you remember there was an NBA? I can't remember if it was finals or it was playoffs. Coming down to the last second, the Bulls call a timeout, and Pippen took himself out of the game.
Yes, that's right. Mm-hmm.
And he was ripped for it.
Oh, absolutely.
As he should have been.
Eviscerated. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There you go.
But not now. Not now. Today, weakness is strength.
Right.
Oh, she's so brave. No, if she was brave, she'd be competing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it's a good point to make that it's one thing to understand or to relate to mental health struggles or to have empathy. It's another thing to hold someone up as a hero
because of it.
Right. Like that's an important distinction.
Yeah, absolutely.
That it seems like society has completely missed.
Yeah, it's two completely different worlds.
Right.
It's just
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Words don't have any meaning.
Exactly.
Weakness is strength. Right. What? Are you kidding me? Like, I mean, we talked on a few shows ago about Jesse Owens. You want to talk about pressure?
Right.
He's competing in 1936 in Berlin in front of Hitler.
That's real pressure.
There's some pressure for you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Yep.
So there's that. Let's go ahead and move on. Next thing we want to talk about. Last week we talked about it was great news in the music world. Live music was coming back. This week, really sad news in the music world. Dusty Hill, the bass player, iconic bass player for ZZ Top, passed away this week. Sounds like he passed away peacefully in his sleep at his home in Houston.
That's good.
And this was just a gut punch. I mean, it's.
Oh, I know.
I mean, just look at that. Have you seen a cooler man in your life than Dusty Hill? I mean, the only guy who even comes to mind is in the same band, Billy Gibbons.
Right.
Yeah. Who is, for my money, the coolest man alive. I mean, he just is. Right. And criminally underrated guitar player.
Oh, yeah.
Every list of the all-time greats, he's nowhere near as high up as he should be. But Dusty Hill, just the heart and soul of that band, the bass player who provided that recognizable groove that every ZZ Top song had.
Oh, yeah.
And even though they were all a little bit different, like nobody got more mileage out of a blues shuffle in C than ZZ Top.
Without a doubt.
I mean, if there's another trio in history that can put out the amount of power that those three guys put out every time they were on a stage, I don't know it. I was lucky enough to see them live once. I had
so jealous.
Yeah, they opened. I saw them at Texas Motor Speedway. They opened, and it was like the first NASCAR race of the season at Texas Motor Speedway, and they played a concert before the race. And I had knew a guy. We had passes to this dude's suite that got us down into the infield. And so me and my buddy Kirk Workman, also rest in peace, say hey to Dusty for me. He and I got down there pretty close to the stage, and it was phenomenal. Helicopter comes in, lands in the infield. Three guys get out of the helicopter, walk up on stage, and just tore into every song you would want to hear in a ZZ Top show. just back to back to back, because I'm sure they had a time crunch because the race was going to be televised, and so they had to be, get in and get out. But they played everything you would want to hear. I mean, they just walked up on stage and just tore into Give Me All Your Lovin'. Yep. I think they closed with LaGrange, of course, but I mean, Sharp Dressed Man, Tush, everything, every ZZ Top song that you would want to hear.
Yep.
They just blew the place up.
Man.
And I mean, no frills, no big stage show, because they just built a stage right there in the infield, right on the edge of the track.
Right.
And yeah, just absolutely killed it.
Incredible.
Yeah, I mean, just phenomenal.
I can only imagine.
I love like the pairing of his voice and Billy Gibbons, because Dusty had that sort of higher pitch, that higher tone kind of tenor with some rasp in it, and then you got Billy with the really, really low, the rumor spreading round.
Yep.
How. Like, it doesn't get cooler than ZZ Top. It just doesn't.
No, it really doesn't. Yeah.
And it just makes me sad that, not ever going to see those three guys on stage again.
Yep. They were possibly the band that really got me into when I was younger and used to think, classic rock was just, that's just music for dads, and it's just lame,
Right.
That's not the real cool stuff, right? And I remember hearing a ZZ Top song. I forget which one. But it didn't matter, because as soon as I heard one, I had to hear them all.
All of them.
Right?
Yep. I want to listen to everything these guys do.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And that was kind of the thing that broke through. Like, oh, yeah, this old blues rock is, like, really cool.
Killer. I saw Billy Gibbons. Billy has, like, his own little side project where he does this sort of little solo just blues act.
Uh-huh.
Saw them at Billy Bob's a couple of years ago. Just blew the roof off the place. I mean, it was him and two other guys, one other guitar player and a drummer. Nothing on stage but those three guys. Packed house at Billy Bob's. And we got there early, went to see guys ride bulls. I mean, where else but like
it's the perfect
Billy
venue.
Bob's is perfect for ZZ Top, right? I mean,
oh yeah.
You got like half a dozen barbecue joints within Billy Bob's. Then you can pay like $8 and go watch guys risk their lives riding bulls in the same building. And we're sitting there watching the guys doing the bull riding, and like where the chute is, where they load the bulls in, and the guys get on. There's like a little balcony above it. Right. I'm sitting there and I elbow my buddy Les. I'm like, hey, there's Billy Gibbons. He's just standing on the balcony watching the guys get on the bulls, and he's just standing there watching bull riding like everybody else.
Just hanging out.
Beer in hand, his little beanie hat on, like normal glasses, not his shades or whatever.
Okay.
And then like hour and a half later walks out, dressed about like this, just the sequin nudie suit jacket, and just, it was just killer. He played 2 or 3 ZZ Top songs, but most of the rest were original blues tunes, and just amazing.
Wow.
So, rest in peace, Dusty Hill. The world is a less bluesy place without you.
Absolute legend.
But thankfully, they recorded a whole lot of great music we can listen to for a long time. So,
sure thing.
Let's get to something I'm sort of mildly irritated about this week. You could probably catch I was a little mildly irritated about the coverage of the Simone Biles thing. So keeping with the Olympic theme, because we've talked about the Olympics a couple of times in the last few weeks. I think it was last night. Might have been last night. Might have been night before. This whole like the inclusion of like the woke mindset into everything, and how it's invaded the Olympics too. And somebody on NBC Sports made a huge deal, wanted to make sure that the American people knew they were doing everything they could not to sexualize the Olympic athletes.
What?
Okay. Is that why you have women's beach volleyball on in prime time then?
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because everybody really cares about beach volleyball in the interim between the Olympics, right?
Right. No, it's the top of SportsCenter every night.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what could possibly be the reason that every heterosexual male in the world is cheering for the gold medal match to be between Switzerland and Brazil in women's beach volleyball? Because they really just want to see some really high-quality volleyball. That's what it is.
That's right.
They really love how after every point, they get together and hug and pat each other on the rear end because they really appreciate teamwork and camaraderie. That's what it is.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. It's reading Playboy for the articles, right?
Exactly. Like, go ahead and try to desexualize the Olympics. See what happens to your ratings, too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Because I can tell you right now, I'll bet you every dollar in my pocket that the toughest gig to get at NBC Sports is to be the lead camera guy for women's beach volleyball in the Olympics. I don't know how they decide that, if it's just like a lottery or if it's like like Hunger Games style death match between the camera guys. Losers die, winner gets to film Olympic beach volleyball, and all the camera guys are like, I'm in.
Exactly.
I'm in. Put that on TV. I'll watch that. Let's
the
tell about
cameraman
that.
death match.
Yeah, before the Olympics. Yeah.
I'm in on that.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
I mean, here's a news flash. NBC: men like to look at women. Okay, some women like to look at those women.
There you go.
Some men like to look at those men. Why is it? It's always, we were talking about this too. It's always talking about the female athletes, right?
Right.
Because I got news for
point.
you. I watched like something. I think it was a men's platform diving.
Mm-hmm.
And dude, not that I want to, but I'm pretty sure I know what religion a couple of those guys are. I mean, let's face it, okay? Diving, swimming,
right?
Track and field, the races, okay? Anything where speed is what you're measuring. The athletes want as little resistance, wind resistance or water resistance of swimming that they can possibly have. So they are going to wear either the least amount of clothing or the tightest clothing known to man. Okay?
Exactly.
I mean, you watch the sprinters in the Olympics. Like, dudes coming running the 100. I mean, just junk bouncing everywhere. Like it is. All right. I mean, what are you going to do?
Is what it is.
Why don't we just change it to the 100-meter burlap sack race from now on? Like we're at a family picnic or something.
Right.
I mean, it's like,
apparently,
are we supposed to like treat the athletes like Elvis on the Ed Sullivan Show now? Like, we're just going to show headshots from now on. We're just going to show their faces, and you can decide for yourself who's winning.
Exactly.
Like pay no attention to the rest of their body. And look, I mean, these are the epic of the physical form, right? They're in the best shape anybody could be. If I looked like that, you'd be hard-pressed to get me to wear clothes. I'd be like somewhere between like Matthew McConaughey and my shirt taking off and old school like Mark Wahlberg when he was still Marky Mark dropping his pants everywhere.
Right, right.
I mean, it is what it is. Like, this is the real world. Again, there are people who live in the real world and people who don't.
Right.
I mean, we're just going to, just start treating them like Elvis. The Americans will all be wearing gold lame suits in the next Olympics and only filmed from the waist up.
Apparently so. Yeah, it's very strange to me. Like you said, it's just that.
Or how about this? While we're at it, we could just have Stevie Wonder do the play-by-play and just describe to you what he thinks is going on.
Yes.
Well, if you could see it in my mind, those sprinters are really moving those legs quickly.
Right.
Come on, man.
It's just comical, right?
It is. I mean, it's and while you're at it, NBC, if you're trying to de-sexualize the Olympics, I don't know if you caught this. It was maybe, I don't know, last night before. One of the NBC reporters is interviewing, I think it was it was a swimming event. I think it was like a relay. And they're interviewing two guys from the relay team from Great Britain. And the reporter who's talking about the guy who swam third in this relay, and she's talking to him, and she keeps complimenting him on that phenomenal third leg of yours. Even when she said it, both the guys who are sitting there in the interview are trying not to laugh, and she must have said it half a dozen times. Like, okay, you want to desexualize the Olympics? Maybe educate your reporters a little bit on don't say this, right?
That's way too good. I need to find that clip.
Oh, man. Yeah, you can find it on Twitter. I guarantee you.
Yep.
So, I mean, what are we gonna do? I mean, we just make all the women compete in burqas,
right?
In every sport. I mean, Saudi Arabia would probably be on board.
There you go. That's the way to get them back in the Olympics.
All of a sudden, the Saudi women dominate the Olympics. They're the only people who know how to swim in burqas and run fast.
They've been training for this their whole life.
Their whole life. This is our moment. Good luck, gymnasts. trying to do double, quadruple Lindy with 4 twists, covered head to toe in fabric.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And speaking of gymnasts, okay, every time they put female gymnasts on the screen, they got their name, their country, and what's right underneath it, how old she is.
Right.
Do they do that in every other sport? If they do, I haven't really noticed it. And I'm here to tell you, they do that. That's because every dirty old man in the world wants to know just how bad he should feel about himself when they put this girl in a leotard on the screen.
Exactly. Yeah.
But don't worry.
Talking reality. Yeah.
Yeah, don't worry. NBC is on the case.
NBC, no, that's right.
They're gonna take care of it.
Their investigative journalism, their top 10 lists are on point.
Exactly.
They're
totally in touch with reality. They've got a grasp on it. I mean, yeah.
Which, by the way, talking about the desexualizing the Olympics, the other story I read along those lines was they installed for all the athletes in the Olympic Village to try to mitigate activity, right? Cardboard beds.
I did hear this.
And I'm just like, my first thought's like, well, a couple things. Number one, you really think that's going to stop?
Right.
These are athletes in peak physical form.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hanging out with. Yeah.
I think they can figure things out without. You know what I mean?
You cannot.
Very strange.
It's human nature, right?
Yeah.
We're going to conquer human nature with a cardboard bed. Got it.
Apparently, that's what they think.
Good to know. Good to know you got that handled.
Mm-hmm.
I was really worried about it.
Yeah.
Like I would like to just watch Olympic sports and cheer for my country. I really would. Just once.
Right.
It's just it doesn't seem like it's that much to ask.
It seems like it used to be that simple, and somehow.
I tell you when I think it was really, and maybe it's because I'm sort of a child of the 80s. I mean, I'm a Cold War kid, But when the Soviet Union was like the be-all, end-all, like the evil empire, and it didn't matter what the sport was. If it was the U.S. versus the Soviet Union, it took on ramifications well beyond sport.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it didn't matter if it was, if it was Olympic ping pong, but it's the USSR versus the U.S.
Yep.
Whole world's going to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's picking a side.
Exactly.
I mean, it was just like the 1980 Olympic hockey team, one of the greatest stories in the history of sport. It's for that, right?
Sure.
So I get that sports can take on, bigger stories. And
themes. And
it's like we've talked about before. Like it should be, if you kept politics out of it to the degree that you can, then it becomes a way where we can sort of indulge that kind of tribal instinct, us versus them.
Right.
Right. Like we can fight it out with the Russians on a sheet of ice.
Exactly.
In a hockey rink, without blowing up the whole world.
Mm-hmm. And it becomes a productive outlet.
Yeah.
Almost. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We have crammed a whole lot in, but I don't want to shortchange our sponsor for today's show.
Oh.
Today's show brought to you by the Snake Hole Lounge of Pawnee, Indiana. Which I'm pretty sure probably figured into CNBC's ranking of Indiana as one of the worst places in America to live. The fact that they have the Snake Hole Lounge.
Just the fact that it exists.
Yep. And guess what? People lining up to make it into that club.
That they are.
I think it's an American success story myself, because I know at least one of the owners was literally homeless.
That's right. Yep.
So, I mean, that's just the American entrepreneurial spirit at its best, as far as I'm concerned.
Doing its thing. I mean, great views. I hear they've got a canyon. I think they call it the pit over there.
I think so.
But it's a scenic view.
Yep.
You know,
you got to avoid it. You don't want to fall into it. But,
that's right.
So there you go. Today's show brought to you by Snake Hole Lounge. All right, I think we've done enough damage for today. I've probably offended as many people as I possibly could in the span of 30 minutes. So my work here is done.
Sounds good.
And thanks to Stan the Man, all the people at the JPK Network, Brett on the board. Thank you all for tuning in again. If you didn't like it, come back next week. I'll offend another group of people, and you can join in.
There you go.
All right. It's the Snarky Parenthetical on the JPK Network. We'll see you next week.